Have you ever wondered why some women seem to grow increasingly frustrated with their husbands as the years go by? It's a reality that many long-term couples experience. What once felt like a strong bond can sometimes turn into daily irritation, silent resentment, or even outright hostility. But why does this happen? Why do so many women after decades of marriage find themselves feeling disconnected, exhausted, or even resentful toward the very person they once chose to spend their lives with? In this video, we're going to explore the deep-rooted reasons behind this shift, from evolving emotional needs to years of unspoken frustration. There are specific patterns that cause marriages to drift into tension over time. Many of these changes happen gradually, so slowly that neither person realizes what's happening until one day the warmth is gone, replaced by resentment, frustration, or even regret. But here's the truth. Understanding these patterns can help you see things more clearly, whether it's your own marriage or someone else's, and by recognizing these signs, there's still a chance to change course, to reconnect, and to create a relationship that feels fulfilling again. Stay with me until the very end, because the reasons behind this shift might surprise you. These aren't just complaints or passing irritations. There are deeper psychological and emotional factors at play, ones that have been shaping relationships for years without people even realizing it. By the time we're done, you may see your own marriage or even past relationships in an entirely new light. Before we begin, if you haven't subscribed yet, I recommend you subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss any videos. If you enjoy this video, please type 1 in the comments. If you don't like it, type 0 in the comments to let me know so I can make better videos for you. Now let's get started. Number 1. Years of emotional labor without appreciation. Remember when you juggle a dozen tasks before breakfast? Packing lunches, ironing shirts, remembering whose birthday was coming up, all while keeping a smile on your face? That's emotional labor, the invisible glue that holds a family together. For many women in their 60s, 70s, and beyond, it's been a lifelong role. You planned holiday dinners, soothed hurt feelings, and kept the house humming, often without a second thought. But here's where the ache begins. After decades of pouring out that care, too many husbands stop noticing. It's not that they're cruel, just comfortable, assuming it's your job, not your gift. Those early mornings blending seamlessly into late nights, the mental checklists you carried like a second skin, the way you'd anticipate everyone's needs before they even knew them, it was a quiet art form. Over time, though, that art can feel like a shadow, unnoticed in the bustle of life, leaving a hollow spot where recognition should be. Take Carol, a 72-year-old retired teacher I met at a community center. She raised 3 kids, taught full-time, and made sure her husband's life ran like clockwork. Every Thanksgiving, she'd roast the turkey just how he liked it. Every Christmas, she'd wrap gifts with care. But one year, she looked back and realized he'd never once said, "Thanks, Carol, you're amazing." Now, she doesn't feel love, she feels worn out. Studies back this up. A 2019 survey from the American Psychological Association found that 65% of women over 60 reported feeling unappreciated for household contributions, compared to just 38% of men. Carol's exhaustion wasn't just physical. It was the weight of years spent giving without receiving, a silent tally of moments she'd hoped he'd see. She'd watch him enjoy her meals, her tidied home, her thoughtfulness, yet the words never came. That absence grew louder with age, turning her devotion into a burden she hadn't signed up for. Life lessons from the elderly teach us that appreciation isn't a luxury, it's a lifeline. In our younger years, a quick thank you or a warm hug might have been enough. But as we age, with creaky knees and quieter days, we need to know our efforts still matter. When that's missing, resentment settles in, not loud and angry, but soft and steady, like a river carving stone. If this rings true for you, know you're not alone. Your heart's work deserves to be seen, and there's still time to ask for that gentle nod of thanks. Maybe it's the way you kept traditions alive, or how you'd mend a torn shirt late at night. Those acts wove the fabric of your family. Now, with silver hair and wiser eyes, you've earned more than silence. You've earned a voice to say, "I'd love to hear you notice." It's not too late to reclaim that spark of gratitude. What's one thing you did for your family that you're proud of, and did anyone ever thank you for it? Share your story in the comments. I'd love to hear. Number 2, feeling like a roommate instead of a wife. Think back to those early days. Stolen glances across the dinner table, late-night talks about dreams, the thrill of holding hands on a walk. That spark felt eternal. But fast forward 40 or 50 years, and for many women, that closeness fades into something else, a polite routine, like sharing a house with a friend. You're still under the same roof, eating the same meals, but the warmth? It slipped away, leaving you feeling more like a roommate than a wife. Those little rituals, sharing a coffee, planning a weekend escape, once wove your days together. Now, silence fills the spaces where laughter used to live, and the kitchen table feels more like a checkpoint than a haven. It's a slow unraveling, so subtle you might miss it, until the heart's quiet yearning whispers a truth you can't ignore. Linda, a 69-year-old retired nurse, knows this well. She and her husband used to laugh over silly things, stroll through the park arm in arm, plan a future together. Now he's glued to the TV, and their talks are about grocery lists or the weather. She tried to bridge the gap, asked about his day, suggested a walk, but he didn't notice the drift. To him, everything's fine. To her, everything's changed. A 2021 AARP study found that 42% of couples over 65 report feeling emotionally disconnected, often because daily habits replace deeper bonds. Linda recalls how they'd once linger over dinner, swapping stories from work, their eyes bright with interest. These days, she eats alone in spirit, the TV's hum drowning out any chance for connection. She misses his curiosity, his presence, not just his body in the room, but his heart reaching for hers. As we age, we crave connection just as much as ever, maybe more. Our kids are grown, our careers are behind us, and we long to feel seen, desired, heard. Life lessons from the elderly remind us that love isn't a one-and-done deal. It's a garden needing tending. When husbands stop watering it, assuming presence is enough, that distance grows. But here's the hope. Many women nudge their partners toward closeness before giving up. If he listens, there's a chance to rediscover each other. You deserve that joy. Don't be afraid to reach for it. With time stretching long and slow now, those small gestures, a shared laugh, a question about your day, become treasures worth reclaiming. Linda's still trying, softly asking for more, and maybe one day he'll turn from the screen to see her again. Your heart's worth that patience, that brave step forward. If you're still here, thank you for sharing this quiet moment with me. If today's message touched something true in your life, just comment number 2 so I know you're here. And if you haven't yet, I'd love for you to subscribe and tap the bell so you won't miss what's next. This channel is a gentle space where experience matters, kindness is shared, and growing older means something. I'm truly grateful you're here. Number 3, unresolved conflicts that have built up over the years. Every marriage has its bumps, little arguments, forgotten promises, words that sting more than intended. In our 20s and 30s, we might brush them off, thinking there's time to fix things. But as the decades stack up, those unresolved hurts don't vanish. They pile up like unread letters, whispering resentment into our hearts. For older women, this is a quiet thief of peace. Back then, a sharp remark or a missed anniversary might have been softened by a busy life, kids to chase, dinners to cook. Now, with quieter days, those echoes linger, replaying in the stillness, each one a tiny crack in the foundation we built. They're not loud battles, but soft shadows that grow heavier with time, stealing the ease we once took for granted. Patricia, a 74-year-old retired accountant, carries 40 years of those moments. She remembers her husband shrugging off her feelings. "You're overreacting," he'd say, or promising to help more, then forgetting. She'd raise it, he'd dismiss it, and eventually she stopped trying. Now she sees him not as her partner, but as someone who didn't care enough to listen. Research from the Journal of Marriage and Family in 2020 shows that unresolved conflict is a top predictor of marital dissatisfaction in couples over 60, with 58% of women citing it as a lingering pain. Patricia still recalls the night she asked for help with the dishes after a long day, only to find him asleep on the couch. That small betrayal, repeated over years, built a wall she didn't mean to raise. Each dismissal chipped away at their bond, leaving her with memories of a love that once felt mutual but now feels one-sided. Aging brings reflection. We look back and weigh what mattered. When hurts go unaddressed, they shift how we see our spouses, turning admiration into distance. Husbands might think silence means all's well, but often it's surrender. The good news? It's never too late for a heart-to-heart. Sharing those old wounds, gently and honestly, can heal more than you'd guess. Your voice still holds power. Use it with grace. As the years slow us down, we see clearer. Those moments weren't petty. They shaped us. Patricia wonders if a quiet talk now over coffee could mend what's frayed. It's not about blame, but understanding. Reaching across the years to reclaim a piece of what was. You've carried wisdom through every storm. Let it guide you to peace now. What's a time you let a hurt go to keep the peace? Was it worth it? Or do you wish you'd spoken up? Share your thoughts below. Number 4. A shift in priorities that leaves her feeling unfulfilled. Life changes us. In our younger years, we poured ourselves into raising kids, keeping the home, supporting our husbands' careers, beautiful, busy chaos. But as we hit our 60s and 70s, with the nest empty and the days slower, many of us feel a tug toward something new. Maybe it's travel, a hobby, or just deeper talks about life. What happens when our husbands don't feel that same pull? Those whirlwind years of packed lunches and late-night laundry left little room for our own dreams. Dreams we tucked away like old photographs. Now, with time stretching before us, we yearn to dust them off, to feel the wind of possibility again. But when he's content with the same old chair, the same old quiet, it's like our wings are clipped just as we're ready to soar. Helen, a 68-year-old retired librarian, felt it keenly. After decades of family focus, school projects, vacations, cozy evenings, she wanted adventure in retirement, a trip to Italy, a book club, painting classes. Her husband, happy with his recliner and the evening news. "I'm fine as is," he'd say, missing her restlessness. A 2022 Pew Research study found that 47% of women over 65 seek new experiences post-retirement, compared to 33% of men, often leading to a values gap. Helen used to dream aloud with him, nights filled with plans for far-off places or quiet talks by the fire. Now she sits alone with her sketchbook, tracing outlines of a life she craves, while he flips channels, oblivious to the growing space between them. It's not anger she feels, it's a longing for the partner who once shared her curiosity, now replaced by a stranger in familiar clothes. This isn't about blame, it's about growth. We've earned the right to chase joy in these years, but when our partners stay rooted in old routines, it can feel like we're tethered to a life that no longer fits. That's where resentment brews, not just boredom, but a sense of being held back. Life lessons from the elderly show us that aging can be a season of possibility. Talk to him about your dreams. Small steps together might just reignite that shared spark. We've spent decades nurturing others, now it's our turn to bloom. Maybe a weekend drive, a shared class, A conversation about what's next? Helen's still hoping he'll look up one day, see her sketches, and ask to join her. Your dreams matter, and they're worth whispering into the quiet, because even late blooms can thrive with a little light. If you're still here, thank you for sharing this quiet moment with me. If today's message touched something true in your life, just comment number 4 so I know you're here. And if you haven't yet, I'd love for you to subscribe and tap the bell so you won't miss what's next. This channel is a gentle space where experience matters, kindness is shared, and growing older means something. I'm truly grateful you're here. Number 5, a lack of emotional and physical affection. There's nothing like those early years. The brush of a hand, a whispered, "You're beautiful," a hug that says, "I'm here." As we age, those gestures don't lose their magic, they become even more precious. Yet for many women they fade away, leaving an emptiness that cuts deep. It's not just physical, it's the emotional glow of feeling cherished. Back then, a playful nudge or a soft good morning lit up our days, tiny threads tying us closer. Now with years behind us, those threads feel frayed, and the quiet grows colder without them. We notice every missing touch, every unspoken word, because they once warmed us like sunlight through a window, and their absence leaves a chill no blanket can fix. Sharon, a 71-year-old retired secretary, misses it every day. She and her husband used to hold hands on walks, share spontaneous hugs. Now he barely glances her way, and their talks are all business, bills, errands, schedules. "We're too old for that," he told her once, not seeing her hurt. A 2023 National Institute on Aging report notes that 60% of women over 70 say a lack of affection impacts their well-being, versus 44% of men. Sharon remembers how he'd tuck her hair behind her ear, his eyes twinkling with pride, making her feel like the only woman in the room. These days she sits across from him at breakfast, her coffee cooling as he scans the paper, the silence shouting louder than any argument. It's not just the touch she craves, it's the love it carried, now a memory she holds alone. We don't outgrow the need to feel loved, our hearts stay young, even if our bodies don't. When affection dries up, it's not just lonely, it's a silent message that we're invisible. Many of us hint at wanting more closeness, and if he brushes it off, we stop asking, not because we don't care, but because we're tired of hoping. Don't give up yet. A gentle nudge, "I'd love a hug today," might remind him how much it matters. You're still that radiant woman he fell for. With wrinkles and wisdom, we still glow, still yearn for that tender spark. A hand on ours, a kind word to lift the day. Sharon's saving her voice for one more try, believing he might still hear her. Your heart's too precious to stay quiet. Let it speak, soft and sure. What's a tender moment from your past that warmed your heart? What made it so special? Tell us below. Number 6, feeling like she's taken for granted. One of the deepest sources of resentment in a long-term marriage is the feeling of being taken for granted, of giving, sacrificing, and showing love for decades, only to feel like it's no longer noticed or appreciated. Over time, many women realize that the things they once did out of love, preparing meals, remembering special dates, supporting their husband through life's challenges, have become expectations rather than gestures of care. And when appreciation disappears, so does the warmth in a marriage. At the beginning of a relationship, there's often gratitude. A husband might say, "Thank you for making dinner," or "I appreciate how much you do for me." But as the years pass, many husbands stop acknowledging these everyday efforts, assuming that their wife will always take care of things. And that shift, from being appreciated to being expected, slowly turns love into resentment. Take someone like Nancy, a 72-year-old retired school principal. For years, she had taken care of her household without complaint. She made sure her husband's favorite meals were on the table, She kept the home in order, scheduled appointments, and handled the little things that made their lives smoother. But over time, she started to notice something. He never said thank you anymore. When she went out of her way to do something thoughtful, it was met with silence, as if it was simply her job. One day, after spending hours preparing a meal, she sat down, looked at her husband and asked, "Do you even notice how much I do for you?" His response? A confused shrug. That was the moment she realized he had stopped seeing her efforts entirely. This feeling of being invisible in your own marriage is devastating. When a woman spends years giving and giving without ever receiving acknowledgement or reciprocity, it wears her down, and after enough time, she stops wanting to give at all. The real issue isn't just that men stop showing appreciation, it's that many of them don't realize how much their wives do in the first place. A woman who has spent her life handling the details of a household, remembering birthdays, supporting her husband emotionally, and keeping the relationship together may seem fine on the outside, but internally she may feel exhausted, drained, and completely unseen. And here's the part many men don't understand. Resentment doesn't happen because of one big event. It happens because of 1,000 small moments of feeling unappreciated. When a woman no longer feels valued, she starts to emotionally withdraw. She doesn't laugh as much, she stops initiating conversations, she stops doing the little things she once did with love, not because she wants to punish her husband, but because she simply has nothing left to give. What many husbands fail to realize is that appreciation doesn't take much. A simple thank you, an occasional "I see how much you do," or even an unexpected compliment can make a woman feel loved and noticed. But when those words disappear completely, so does the emotional connection. If you've ever felt like you're giving endlessly without receiving gratitude, if you've ever wondered whether your husband even notices all that you do, know that your feelings are valid. Many women go through this silent struggle, wondering if their efforts even matter anymore. If you're still watching this video and finding these insights valuable, please comment number 6 below to let me know you're here. Your engagement helps me continue creating content that supports and uplifts you. If you're still here, thank you for sharing this quiet moment with me. If today's message touched something true in your life, just comment number 6 so I know you're here. And if you haven't yet, I'd love for you to subscribe and tap the bell so you won't miss what's next. This channel is a gentle space where experience matters, kindness is shared, and growing older means something. I'm truly grateful you're here. Number 7, realizing that they've grown apart. One of the most heartbreaking reasons women begin to resent their husbands as they age is the realization that they have simply grown apart, that the man they once shared dreams and laughter with now feels like a stranger. This doesn't happen overnight. It happens slowly, over years of routine, neglect, and a lack of effort to stay emotionally connected. One day, a woman looks at her husband and thinks, "Who is this person, and how did we get here?" Many marriages start with deep connection, long conversations, shared goals, and the feeling of truly being partners in life. But as the years go by, life gets in the way. Careers, children, responsibilities, and stress begin to take priority. And if a couple doesn't make a conscious effort to grow together, they inevitably grow apart. For many women, the first sign of this shift is a lack of meaningful conversation. They realize that they and their husband no longer talk the way they used to. Sure, they might discuss practical things, bills, family plans, daily routines, but the deeper connection is gone. The curiosity about each other's thoughts and feelings has faded. She might try to bring up something important, but instead of engaging, he brushes it off with short, indifferent responses. Over time, she stops trying. Take someone like Margaret, a 74-year-old retired social worker. When she and her husband were younger, they would stay up late talking about their dreams, their fears, and their plans for the future. But now, conversations had become shallow. When she asked him about his thoughts on something important, he would simply grunt in response or turn the conversation back to the news on TV. When she tried to talk about her own personal growth or interests, he barely listened, and that's when she realized she was living with someone who no longer truly knew her. This emotional disconnect becomes even more painful when women realize that their husbands don't seem to mind. While they feel the loneliness deeply, many men continue on as if nothing is wrong. They assume that as long as there's no major conflict, everything must be fine. But for a woman, emotional disconnection is just as painful as a full-blown argument. It makes her feel isolated, invisible, and deeply alone within her own marriage. Another common realization is that they no longer share the same interests. Over the years, many women develop new passions, hobbies, or ways of thinking, while their husbands remain exactly the same. She might want to travel, take up a new skill, or engage in deep discussions about life, but if her husband refuses to evolve with her, she starts to feel trapped in a marriage that no longer fulfills her. The most painful part? Many women mourn the marriage they once had. They remember the man who used to make them laugh, who used to hold their hand without thinking, who used to care about their thoughts and dreams. But when that version of their husband disappears, they're left with someone who's physically present but emotionally absent, and that absence is what builds resentment. Here's the truth. Love isn't something that just happens. It's something that has to be maintained. And when a husband stops putting in effort, stops learning about his wife, stops choosing to stay emotionally connected, he slowly turns into a stranger in his own home. If this resonates with you, if you've ever felt the quiet heartbreak of realizing that you and your husband have become distant, know that you're not alone. Many women go through this, often wondering if they're the only ones feeling this way. What's a life lesson you've learned about keeping love alive over the years? Pass it on in the comments. Final thoughts. Well, friends, as we come to the end of our time together today, let's pause and look back on what we've shared. Life has a way of teaching us through its quiet moments, doesn't it? Many women don't just wake up one morning feeling distant from their husbands. It's a slow gathering of unspoken frustrations, needs left unmet, and that gentle ache of not being truly seen, heard, or cherished anymore. It's rarely the big blowouts or betrayals that chip away at a marriage. More often it's those small, steady disappointments. The missed thank you, the forgotten glance that pile up over the years like leaves falling unnoticed until the tree stands bare. But here's a truth I've learned after all these years, and maybe you have too. Resentment isn't the end of love. It's a sign that something's asking for care. It's like a garden gone dry, whispering for water. Many of us have sat in that silence, feeling our emotions are too tangled to unravel, or that time has slipped too far to fix things. But let me tell you, it's never too late. Not for a heartfelt talk over coffee, not for asking to be appreciated, not for fanning that old spark back to life. And if the path ahead means finding a new way to bloom on your own, that's okay too. Life's too rich to stop growing, no matter how many candles are on the cake. If any of this feels familiar, if you've seen yourself in Carol's tired hands, Linda's quiet table, or Sharon's longing for a hug, know you're not walking this road alone. Your feelings matter. They're threads in a tapestry woven by so many women who've faced the same. And here's the beauty. Those who've been through it often come out stronger, wiser, with a sureness that only time can give. One of life's great lessons is that we deserve to feel valued. Always have, always will. It's not selfish to want that. It's human. We've spent decades lifting others, our kids, our homes, our partners. Now, in these golden years, it's our turn to stand tall and say, I'm still here, and I'm worth seeing. I'd love to sit with you a little longer through your stories. Which of these moments touched your heart today? Maybe it's a memory of a time you felt unseen, or a shift in your own marriage that echoes what we've talked about. Drop it in the comments. I cherish reading every word you share. And while you're there, tell me one thing you've picked up today. Maybe a bit of wisdom or a small step you'll take. Your thoughts light up this space, and they keep me going knowing we're in this together. If this chat warmed your spirit or gave you something to ponder, give it a like, subscribe if you haven't, and pass it along to a friend. Your support keeps these conversations alive, and I'm so grateful for it. Thanks for being here with me today. I can't wait to see you again soon.